For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. Flying saucers in folktales. Scientists seek the roots of UFOs in folklore. Who hasn't heard of UFOs, flying saucers, or unidentified flying objects? Reports of them periodically appear in the media, and an entire field of study, ufology, has emerged. However, few researchers seek the roots of the phenomenon in folklore. Much like folk tales, most stories about close encounters are based on oral accounts of eyewitnesses, narrations of real or imagined, unexplained, or frightening events. These types of stories are called bivalytsi, a term from Slavic folklore referring to accounts of extraordinary experiences. It is precisely this feature that makes UFO stories stand out. The storyteller emphasizes the improbability of what has happened to them. The unusual nature of the event is further highlighted by descriptions of intense fear. First, a strong and inexplicable physical fear, followed by psychological panic, and finally, a desperate escape from the encounter site. Emphasizing credibility, a crucial feature of bivalytsi is their insistence on being true, a mandatory element in UFO stories. In the end, I swear, if necessary, I will repeat it before a crucifix, that we saw the mysterious object. The tale of a UFO encounter is always about an extraordinary event, and the narrator emphasizes its sudden and unexpected nature, something typical for bivalytsi. Its appearance was sudden. Unlike mythological characters, UFO encounters do not always stress eerie or mysterious settings, though they usually take place in the dark and in remote locations. For instance, a Frenchman named Antoine was picking mushrooms in a secluded meadow. Suddenly, at the edge of the woods, he spotted a short figure, about 1.2 meters tall, followed by another. The beings noticed him, let out a cry, and darted into the bushes. In old bivalytsi, the protagonists were devils, witches, forest spirits, water nymphs, and household deities. In modern stories, they are replaced by humanoid beings, giants, dwarfs, and even tiny creatures. Sometimes they avoid contact with humans, not by flying away, but simply by disappearing. In folklore, a goblin or water spirit vanishes when someone invokes the name of God or makes the sign of the cross. In contrast, modern strange beings are not afraid. They simply do not want to be seen. One morning, 4 friends were walking through a forest. Suddenly, they noticed a massive orange-red sphere, about 50 meters in diameter, descending quickly from the sky. It landed 300 meters away. As they approached, it suddenly vanished, as if it had been extinguished. The traditional structure of an encounter. If an encounter does happen, it follows the traditional structure of a bivalytsi. The eyewitness is paralyzed, unable to move. A woman, looking out the window of her house, saw an enormous reddish object hovering low over a lake. She tried to step closer to the window, but felt as if an energy barrier was preventing her. Minutes later, the object flew away, but she remained frozen in place for some time. In the past, goblins were said to jump into carriages or sleds, stopping the horses. The horses stopped, and no effort by the coachman could make them move. The same phenomenon is observed with modern vehicles, cars and motorboats. 2 American firefighters were fishing from a boat when they saw a bright, circular, glowing object about 4.5 meters in diameter. The boat's motor roared, the water churned, but the boat wouldn't move. Then the UFO took off, and the boat suddenly surged forward, throwing the men overboard. Compare this with an old goblin tale. The coachman barely had time to say, "What's happening, my lord?" before the horses bolted forward. Memory loss is another common feature in many UFO encounter stories. This is also characteristic of old mythological and folk tales, where people either forget what happened to them or are forbidden to speak of it. Ken Rogers, a professional researcher and chairman of the British UFO Research Association, shared his own experience. One day, while driving through a rural area, he noticed a bright, fiery sphere on a hilltop. He stopped his car and got out. The object moved across the road and descended into a field about 800 meters away. Ken ran toward it. What happened next remains unknown. The result of his encounter: he was hospitalized with nervous shock. After his release, he quit his position and burned all his research archives, stating, "None of the major UFO researchers in Britain from the early 1960s are still alive." To be honest, that terrifies me. This bivalytsi contains classic folktale motifs. The hero encounters a mysterious being, is forbidden from speaking about it, and faces dire consequences if the prohibition is broken, potentially even death, a tragic end, nervous breakdown, illness, or death, is also characteristic of old bivalytsi. After encounters with a forest goblin, a water nymph, or a subterranean spirit, a person becomes withdrawn, darkly brooding, disappears, or even dies. Parallels with other folklore elements, UFO bivalytsi also share elements with traditional folktales, such as goblins transforming into mushrooms, offerings of food from mysterious beings, immunity to bullets. For example, Dutch aviation Lieutenant Roman Sobinski claimed that a round, glowing object followed his plane over the Zuiderzee for about 5 minutes as he returned from a bombing raid over Essen. His gunner spotted it first. Sobinski gave the order to fire, but the object was unaffected. Stories of UFOs and their occupants are classic bivalytsi, closely linked to folklore. The structure remains unchanged. Only the characters have been replaced. Instead of devils and goblins arriving in carriages, now extraterrestrials come in flying saucers. Even the term flying saucer did not originate in 1947, as commonly believed. On January 24, 1878, a Texas farmer named John Martin spotted a dark, disc-shaped object flying at incredible speed. To describe it, he used the word saucer. Grammar to the rescue, despite being a humanities discipline. Folklore studies require text to be recorded word for word, capturing all the irregularities of spoken language. The literacy level of the narrator doesn't matter, whether they are recounting a legend, myth, or an anomalous event. In the case of UFO stories, two linguistic peculiarities emerge. Faced with the unknown, eyewitnesses often experience linguistic helplessness. They use shifting grammatical gender and indefinite expressions. "I saw it myself. It's just hanging there. He flew away. She stands there flying, glowing like ah." Folklore studies can contribute to ufology. As the saying goes, behind the trees, you can see the forest, and behind individual stories, folklore emerges. And let's not forget, words are carriers of information.